Fairy Crosses by Mike Decker. Fairy crosses or fairy stones are stones that naturally form in the shape of crosses. For centuries, people have considered fairy stones to be good luck charms. Beliefs associated with them are that they protect the wearer against witchcraft, sickness, accidents, and disasters. It is even claimed that U.S. Presidents Wilson, Harding, and Roosevelt carried or wore fairy stones as talismans. Crafters often use them as charms and earrings and necklaces. The most common shapes of fairy stones are the St. Andrew's cross, which looks like an X, the Roman cross, shaped like a plus sign, and the Maltese cross, which is the rarest, has crossbars at the ends and can also look like a star. Fairy crosses can be found all over the world, including Switzerland, France, Portugal, Russia, Australia, Madagascar. Here in the U.S., common locations for fairy crosses are Maine, New Hampshire, Georgia, New Mexico, and Fairy Stone State Park in Patrick County, Virginia. So, what are fairy crosses? There are three hypotheses of where fairy crosses come from. They are that fairy crosses were created by fairies, that they are man-made, or that they are formed in nature through a process that can be explained by science. Let's start with the hypothesis that fairies created them. Legends say that when fairies heard of the news that Jesus Christ was crucified, the details were so horrible that the fairies cried. Their tears fell to the ground and turned to stones. Because they are stones, they're still here, even after the fairies disappeared from the earth. While this story may entertain, it is hard to prove scientifically as we lack any real evidence of the existence of fairies. Unless, of course, you believe that these are really the mummified remains of fairies, which can be yours for just $36 on Etsy. Second, let's explore the two hypotheses that fairy crosses are handmade. Similar to the fairy tears legend, another ties to the Trail of Tears and says that fairy crosses are the fallen tears of the Cherokee people who were forced to give up their land east of the Mississippi River and relocated to what is now present-day Oklahoma. The tears of the people fell to the ground and turned to stone. While this story also lacks real evidence, one would also imagine that if it were true, fairy stones would only be found in this area of the United States, which stretches from Georgia to Oklahoma. We know that fairy crosses are found elsewhere, not only in the country, but the world as well. Next, there is the hypothesis that fairy crosses are handmade crafts. We can prove that these could exist from knowledge of people carving stones. In fact, while fairy stones are sold as souvenirs, jewelry, and ornaments, some of these are not naturally formed, but actually manufactured. If a vendor is selling a selection of fairy crosses that are all the same size, the same shape, and contain gas bubbles, they might be manufactured. Similar to the ones pictured here, which are most likely manufactured. While we could prove the existence of a man-made carved fairy cross, this hypothesis does not explain naturally occurring fairy crosses that are found in nature. This brings us to our third hypothesis, that fairy crosses are formed in nature through a process that can be explained by science. Enter staurolite. Staurolite is a mineral commonly found in metamorphic rocks, such as schist and gneiss. It forms when shale is strongly altered by regional metamorphism. It is generally found in association with almandine garnet, muscovite, and kyanite. These are minerals that form under similar temperature and pressure conditions. One identifying characteristic of staurolite is its ability to scratch glass. For example, the fairy crosses or staurolite created at Fairystone State Park formed roughly 7 miles underground. As the Blue Ridge Mountains developed, staurolite fairy stones rose to the surface. Once at the surface, wind and rain dissolved the schist and gneiss stone, revealing the cross-shaped staurolite. Staurolite crystals form into tiny bricks that, under pressure, twist in 60 to 90 degree angles, forming crosses. Geologists refer to this type of geological formation as twinning. Twinning is when these six-sided crystals intersect. While 60 degrees is most common with staurolite, 90-degree intersections forming a cross can also be found. In addition to cross-shaped specimens, collectors look out for transparent, faceted staurolite crystals, which are extremely rare. This is because it is unusual to find a staurolite crystal that is both light-colored and large enough to be faceted. This concludes my presentation on fairy crosses, or perhaps more geologically appropriate, staurolite.